More green jackets have been lost at the 12th than at the Augusta City dry cleaners. Rory McIlroy knows this better than most. But what is Amen Corner and why is it so iconic? The famous sequence has always been there since the Masters began in 1934. It didn't get its name until '58 though, when American sports writer Herbert Warren Wind, on the left, wrote, "At the farthest reach of the Augusta National Course, down in the Amen Corner." He drew inspiration from the 1933 jazz song Shouting in That Amen Corner by the Dorsey Brothers. The reason behind its difficulty is all in the sand and the water. Tournament officials don't even bother to count the balls lost in there each year, such is the sheer number. The 11th, named White Dogwood, is a downhill 520-yard par 4 with a pond to the left of the green and a bunker to the right. Both cause a lot of trouble each year. The 12th, Golden Bell, is perhaps the most famous hole in the world, with danger everywhere. Many aim for the flag, but look, get it even slightly wrong and you're in the azaleas at the back, or the bunkers at the front, or even worse, Rays Creek. Or you can play it safe and aim for the open green on the left. You chicken. Tiger Woods once said, if you make 4 bogeys from Thursday to Sunday, you're doing well. And the highest ever score on that hole? 13. It's a par 3. Tom Weiskopf in 1980 was the sorry soul. Often the iconic Ben Hogan Bridge is the only thing players enjoy about Golden Bell. Even if you escape there unscathed though, you met with Azalea, the dogleg par 5 13th. It tempts players to go for the green in 2, but cut over those trees on the left at your peril. Every year, it seems, Amen Corner destroys someone's dreams. Rory McIlroy dropped 3 shots through here as his round unravelled in 2011. In 2016, a year after navigating Amen Corner expertly, Jordan Spieth shot a quadruple bogey on the 12th to throw away his green jacket. I mean, it sounds like my game, to be honest. So who'll be the next to be brought to their knees, praying for mercy after Amen Corner?
Yeah, good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to your weekly Sunday night fix of European football from all over the world, really. Europe and the rest of the world. I'm Danny Kelly. I'll explain to you why I'm still here in just a little while. With me for the next 3 hours, I'm delighted to say 3 hours will take us through till 1 o'clock in the morning. Andy Brassell. We've got all the big stories from across the continent. The Champions League we'll review after those English clubs got the most sensational battered from pillar to post, from P to P. We'll also review what happened in the Europa League and the Conference League. Ben Jacobs will join us to talk about the farce of the AFCON winners being changed 2 months after the event. Tim will join us, Tim Vickery from South America, of course, and we'll focus on the upcoming World Cup playoffs, certainly the European ones that are this week. Huge games for Wales, Ireland and others. All that's coming up on Trans-Europe Express with me, Danny Kelly, him, Andy Brassell, and you, the listening millions. Welcome one, welcome all. Trans-Europe Express. Yeah, hello Andy, how are you?
I'm good, Danny. How are you doing?
Good. Let me just say a few words. People might be surprised to hear my voice after my announcement on Wednesday how ill I am, but that wasn't presented. Maybe I didn't get a message across. I don't start treatment until early next week. When I'll be on to let's talk each other frankly. I'll be getting the chemotherapy, and we'll see how I progress through that and beyond. And we'll see the weeks when I feel fit enough to come on and broadcast. I will. The station have been really good about that. And other times, somebody else will fill in for me. That's the first thing. And here on Trans-Europe Express, you have no need to worry. The weeks I won't be here, Kevin Hatchard, the great Kevin Hatchard, will sit in, and Kevin and Andy will show you what the show could really be like if I was sidelined. And you'll learn from Kevin all about European football and Star Wars. Remember, a children's film, which he's still interested in his late 40s. And the other thing I want to say, because I have the platform, forgive me, and the big microphone, is I have been absolutely, to use the cliche, inundated with well-wishers from every part of my life across a whole half a century, and lots and lots and lots of people saying how much they enjoy Trans-Europe Express and wishing me all the best. Now, I know what traditionally you're supposed to say here. I've been overwhelmed. I haven't been overwhelmed. I've been absolutely delighted. Keep them coming. My ego can handle all the praise and good wishes that you wish to send my way. In all seriousness, if you are a prayer, if you are a positive thinker, send them my way, and I'll do the best to make sure that Andy and I are still doing this into the foreseeable future. Right, that's enough about me, because it's time now for this.
Sa carrière, le Paris Saint-Germain, Mbappé! Mbappé! Little give and go, Mbappe's in! Oh, shoots two! He scored twice in 2 minutes! Tête de Kylian Mbappé. Allez, Kylian!
Yeah, Mbappe watch starts with the Madrid derby. There's a part of me, Andy, that somehow, because of the David against Goliath kind of thing, which is overplayed these days, Atletico are a huge club, and because of the stylistic difference over the last 15 years between the two, well, always, but Atletico have been much more defensive, the stylistic difference between the teams, I actually prefer the Madrid derby to the Clásico. And tonight I wasn't let down. A brilliant game.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because you don't really expect this kind of game from them, because Atletico were the defensive mean asses first, and then Real Madrid and Zinedine Zidane thought, oh, we'll do that as well. And in fact, we'll do it better with higher spec players. And you had this wonderful spell of Diego Simeone looking wistfully over Madrid, going, oh yeah, that could be me. That could be me boring my way to Champions League titles. And funnily enough, they're a lot more like each other than people would like to admit. And I agree. I think that makes this derby really, really special. But of course, as we saw with Atletico in the week at first hand in our great capital city, Diego Simeone would like them to be a great defensive team. I'm not quite sure they are anymore. And this was a really exciting game. And I guess, ironically, talking about the title of this section, which is a very well-established section of Trans-Europe Express, the eponymous star has had very little to do with all the issues we're going to discuss this week.
Yeah, because Real have done what they've done. They've won the derby, which we didn't mention the scoreline, by 3-2, despite being down to 10 men for a third of the game. And of course, Andy, they rolled Manchester City over in the Champions League, largely without Kylian Mbappe. Let's talk about that Champions League tie. No remontada for City after that disastrous first leg.
No, and even though they gave it a good go, they never really felt close to it, I didn't think. And
no.
They were way too open to make it a possibility, even if Bernardo Silva had have stayed on the pitch. And obviously, the reason he went off was due to them being massively stretched at the back and going at it from the absolute off. Whereas, I mean, it should be clear, and we've had a lot of practice seeing teams take a whole lot of different approaches in terms of mentality and competence in approaching a 3-goal deficit in the Champions League this week. And Manchester City's one always seemed fatally flawed to me. And the Bernardo Silva red card was just a result of that. Bear in mind, we might be having a completely different discussion on it had Federico Valverde, who was the Mbappe of the first leg, if you like, not missed a glorious chance in the first 30 seconds of the game.
Yeah, City... but I don't want to. I know because we've seen all these English teams and Atalanta struggle manfully with these gigantic first leg deficits, and none of them found a way really to get back into the ties. So I'm not having a go at City here, but Madrid did what they did. Then tell us how they came to win the derby 3-2 tonight, Andy, and then we'll talk about the reaction of all this to Madrid media favourite, Arbeloa. Tell us about the derby first.
It is interesting, and look, this was a really great game. Real Madrid had a lot of the first half, but went a goal down from, and we're talking about Atletico moving away from what they were, a beautifully put together goal where it was Giuliano Simeone's back heel to Ademola Lookman to put them in front in his first Madrid derby in La Liga. Then Real Madrid turned it around with 2 goals right at the beginning of the second half, a Vini Junior penalty, and what a week he's had. He's this week's Mbappe, whereas Federico Valverde was last week's Mbappe. And then a really bad error from Jose Jimenez, just as he made that really bad error against Spurs in the week to give Xavi Simons the chance to score the winning goal from the penalty spot, banging a clearance really carelessly into Valverde, put them back in front. Then Nahuel Molina, who scored that brilliant goal going back a week and a bit against Getafe, just did the same but at the Bernabeu this time. And then Vini Junior scored the sort of goal that he used to score all the time to win the game. Valverde got sent off late on, loads of pressure from Atletico. Julian Alvarez hit the post from absolutely miles out. It was alive to the end, but I think Real Madrid just about deserved it. And you know what? In terms of who needed it most, well, there's no doubt, because we know where Atletico are finishing. They're not going to win the league, but they are going to end up back in the Champions League. So this really was just for local pride and sport for them.
Yeah, you were at the Spurs Stadium during the week, Andy, for the game. Look, there were lots of things to say about it, but we'll get on to Champions League. But for you, it must be a particular pleasure, because Spurs played as well as they played for a long time, and they won the game. But watching the veteran phase of Antoine Griezmann's career, or Antoine Griezmann, as you're going to call him. What a joy. What a game he had, playing very deep, Andy, and quarterback in Atletico Madrid. I thought he was amazingly good.
Yeah, it was brilliant how he could be 2 completely different players in those 2 separate legs. And he is still a joy to watch. He's fantastic. And I kind of wonder when he goes in the summer, and I would love to see him win a trophy or 2 before he does leave. It feels as if the last bit of Simeone-ness will go with him. And we kind of assumed that would always be Koke, really. Now, Koke's had a really interesting career revival this season. But Griezmann is actually the guy, even more than Simeone Jr., who embodies Simeone on the pitch. You know, someone who works so incredibly hard. Claude Makélélé asked him on French telly at the end of the game. He said, "You're old. Why do you still want to do all that running?" And I thought that was a great question, and Griezmann thought it was funny as well. But you know, he just said it was part of the game. I couldn't play any other way. But
no, I thought I don't know. With my Spurs glasses off, I thought he was terrific. Everyone goes on about the flick for one of the goals, but everything else he did was like watching somebody. Almost, it was like dream football. You know, it was like the opposition had no influence over him, and he just did what he wanted to do. Really, really good.
And for what it's worth, Danny, it probably made all his dreams come true to be strutting his stuff in an NFL stadium. So
that's very fair as well. Yeah. Listen, we were going to talk about the fact that the Madrid media now, in their shameless way that they do, now that Madrid have had a couple of decent results, they're now briefing furiously against Xavi Alonso. But what I really want to talk about, Andy, is the England World Cup camp squads, which do not contain Trent Alexander-Arnold, who after his injury problems is now very much, he started sub today, but is very much part of the Real Madrid team that's, you know, picking its way cautiously towards the Champions League final, still very much in the running for the title in Spain. And I said to Mrs. Kelly, who's not a betting person, I said, I'll tell you what, if you were a betting person, I would tell you to put some money on England for the World Cup, because if they've got 30 better outfield players than Trent Alexander-Arnold, they must be a hell of a team. They really must. I mean, is Tuchel taking a huge risk here, Andy? And I don't mean with the team, because he obviously thinks, you know, that Reece James, if he's fit, or Livramento, if he's fit, can do better than. But if England don't do well, the accusation will be, well, you left some of your best players off the plane.
Yeah, I mean, there's an interesting suffix to both Reece James and Tino Livramento that you brought up there. Not only do England have
good players, of course, really good players.
Exactly, they are. But not only do England have a lot of top quality right backs, they have a lot of top quality right backs with difficult recent injury history. And you know, seeing Reece James go down again this week, I was saying to you earlier,
such a shame.
It is a shame, but it's the reality of Reece James. Otherwise, we'd be talking about him all the time as one of like the top 20 players in the world, I think.
Totally, yeah.
So I think Tuchel has taken a risk. And we've seen it a little bit, actually, from Germany. I was saying this to you earlier with Julian Nagelsmann, who was asked about not including Angelo Stiller in his team.
The best six in the country, you could definitely argue.
Yeah, you could. And destined for the very, very top, I think, when he leaves Stuttgart. And he said, well, look, Stiller's not in my 11, so I decided to try out other players in this big squad. And then, of course, it becomes clear that Alexander Pavlovic, who might be a starter, the Bayern Munich midfielder, maybe alongside Leon Goretzka, we'll have to wait and see, isn't fit for these games. So who does he call up instead? Angelo Stiller. After making a massive great deal of it and basically saying that he doesn't rate him, which is just a ridiculous position to put yourself in. Sometimes you've got to say less.
Yes, you have to say, we know what you have to say. Listen, thank you very much, Andy. That's the latest from Real Madrid. Now, the AFCON story. Look, you've been reading in bits and pieces. Let's get it all. We're going to get it all back together again. We're going to discuss what has happened, why it's happened, and what will happen next. Because this is one of the biggest stories in world football for a long, long time. Changing the result of not just a game or a decision, but an entire tournament, an entire continental tournament, 2 months after the referee has blown the final whistle and the winners have hoisted the trophy skywards. That's coming up next here on Trans Europe Express.
Is Eze England's best option now at number 10?
Oh, no. I think you've got so many options. I mean, I would say nay at the moment, yeah.
For who?
Well, you're looking at, there's so many players can play in there, aren't there? Well, Andy Sanders, as you said, Rodgers should be better on the left, but he can also play on number 10. You've got Bellingham, who, look, whatever season he's had, he does turn up for the big games. He can play in big games. Would he be in front of Eze? Look, Eze scored a cracking goal the other night. There's no doubt in that. And he's banged one in the FA Cup the other day. He's starting to score a few more goals, which is very important. But I'll still I don't think he'll be in that starting number 10.
No, Bellingham for me. You can't ignore Bellingham's talent, and people who do really need to take a look at themselves.
But he's putting pressure. He's putting pressure on himself. Don't get me wrong. He's putting pressure on.
Jude Bellingham doesn't get the credit he deserves for the career he's had already.
He's a young lad.
Because he rates himself. People hate him.
Yeah,
yeah, but you can be confident in your own ability.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can be overconfident. But you still got to be confident. You ain't going to be a player if you're not confident going forward.
Do you remember your interview with Thomas Tuchel when he was like, I mean, my mother finds him repulsive? Yeah. I was like,
I don't.
Should come back from that.
He's not scared to leave one out, Tuchel, though. He ain't going to just pick you for the sake of it. That's what I like about the manager. Because sometimes you can pick people because their reputation and this, that, and that, whatever. But he won't do that. Tuchel will go, right, whoever deserves to play will play.
Yeah.
Is Saka guaranteed to start? Yearney?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I think he would definitely start on that right hand side. Yes.
Welcome back. Let me just remind you, we've got a poll for you tonight. Given all the controversy about the under or over rating of Neymar in the past week or so, I know which side I stand on, but I remain neutral for this poll. We've done a poll for you. Which of these players was the better in their prime? Neymar, Sadio Mane, Eden Hazard or Angel Di Maria? So you get to vote for Neymar, Mane, Hazard or Di Maria. It's an X poll, a Twitter poll. So go to @talkSPORT, @DannyKellyWords or @Andy Brassell, 2 S's and 2 L's, to vote in that poll. Get your votes in now. We'll no doubt hear later on from Tim Vickery about whether Neymar is creeping towards the World Cup or creaking out of it. Meanwhile, speaking of big international tournaments, the controversy, the diplomatic incident, and the groaning about what's happened with AFCON, where Senegal have been denied their title by a board set up by AFCON itself, and had the trophy won as far back as January, has been handed to the hosts. Morocco continues apace to try and find out what exactly has gone on here, the reasons for it, the reaction in the rest of world football, and what next. I'd like to say we're joined, as so often, by top football expert Ben Jacobs. Hello, Ben.
Good evening, guys.
Listen, thank you for joining us. Ben, why don't we, just for those who catch up with their football on this programme only, and there are many, many of them, and they're very welcome, of course, why don't you tell us exactly what's happened here up to now? What is the timeline of this story, which I know is unfolding by the minute?
Yeah, it's an unprecedented story. The AFCON title was won by Senegal on the field, but it's now in the hands of Morocco, subject to an appeal at the Court of Arbitration for Sport. So the AFCON final took place on the 18th of January. Senegal won by 1-0, scored in extra time by Papi Gueye. Before that, Senegal had a disallowed goal they didn't like. Then in the rain, down the other end, Morocco won a penalty that was contentious, and before it was taken and subsequently missed by Brahim Diaz, Senegal walked off for a prolonged period of time. Play resumed. Diaz famously took a Panenka penalty and missed it. Wow. Senegal went on to win the trophy, and then in the immediate aftermath, Morocco appealed, and this appeal has taken 2 months. And CAF's review board has determined that a 10-minute walk-off is a breach of both Article 82 and Article 84, which, without getting into the legal detail, basically says if you walk off for a prolonged period of time, you can both forfeit the game 3-0, and a walkover was therefore given to Morocco, and also be eliminated from the tournament. So the football victory goes to Senegal, but the legal one goes to Morocco. And now Senegal, outraged by that decision, have appealed Morocco's appeal, and we're waiting to see the outcome at the Court of Arbitration for Sport.
To Ben, I mean, it seems to me that in some ways, of course, no, by the letter of the law, 82 and 84, I know the laws myself, actually, the Senegalese should have been disqualified there and then by the match official. Once he's allowed the game to go on, not just for a few seconds for Brahim Diaz to take the penalty, but for a half an hour of added on time, extra time, the mistake is with the officials on the night. And they can't. I can't see how they came to the decision they came to. And I've spoken to other people about this week when I was on H&J on Wednesday. And most people are confident that the Court of Arbitration for Sport will overturn this again.
I mean, I'm not sure about confident, because the Court of Arbitration for Sport can't make an emotional decision. They'll look at the letter of the law. So obviously, Senegal's argument in all of this will be exactly what you said, that it's in the power of the officials in real time to determine a walk-off equals a forfeit of the game. But actually, from Morocco's perspective, by allowing play to resume, gladly taking a penalty, and ultimately not telling the officials in real time that their opponent should be disqualified, the power should be within a neutral official to take action and not a losing side. And yet, because the Court of Arbitration for Sport can't go all the way back and take that unprecedented decision to tell the officials what they're supposed to do, and instead can only look at whether the legal letter of the law has been implemented correctly. I think this lies in the balance, and obviously if the Court of Arbitration for Sport overturns it again and hands it back to Senegal, we'll get a football victory for the sentimentalist, and at the same time it will be very damning on CAF. If CAF upholds the letter of the law set by AFCON and CAF, then that will tell you that this process, even though it's taken 2 months, has legally speaking reached a correct outcome, but it will outrage the football community. So it becomes lose-lose, and either way I don't think there'll be many Morocco players celebrating this, because if they hang on to this AFCON title, it's a hollow victory.
I should make the point here, I'm not suggesting corruption, I really am not, but everything has context. And the context of this tournament, Ben, unless something has eluded me, was that King Mohammed, over the past 20 years, has poured untold riches into football in Morocco. We've seen the amazing facilities they have. We saw their team making the latter stages of the last World Cup. Of course we did. And this tournament was supposed to be the coronation of Moroccan football. And of course, they're hosts of the World Cup after next, in 4.5 years' time, along with Spain and Portugal. It was all about Morocco. Reporters that I know who were out there and were reporting on shows that I do, and for the Athletic, sort of thought that Morocco were getting, if not favourable refereeing, certainly not unfavourable refereeing. And against this background of the enormous pressure for Morocco to win this tournament comes this decision. I mean, I'd say I'm not suggesting anything has gone on here, but I am saying that you have to take these things in context.
Well, I think a lot of people would use the word injustice. There have been allegations of corruption, but obviously CAF deny that. There are CAF board members and officials and sources that I've spoken to, very senior within African football, that whether on or off record have said that this is a great injustice. And one of the biggest challenges is you can't go back and rewrite the decision-making process. You can't be influenced in this final decision as to who actually wins AFCON by the politics. But obviously, if you look at it and put the pieces of the puzzle together, Senegal's outrage was not just about a disallowed goal followed by a penalty. It was about the state of officiating. It was about what they perceived to be a hostile environment, and yet Morocco would just argue they're the host nation. It's supposed to be like that, and you are going to gain a home advantage, but a legal one. So it's fascinating because this whole case has 2 aspects. The first is who wins AFCON, and the second is much bigger. It's political. It's the very reputation in many ways of CAF at stake, and that's why it's lose-lose. Because if it goes back to Senegal, a lot of people will applaud that. But if it goes back to Senegal, what's happened in this process over the last 2 months? And if CAF undermines CAF, then in many ways CAF are in a weaker position. If CAF validates CAF, they're in a stronger position as a hierarchy because they'll be deemed to have followed a very thorough process with the right legal outcome, even if many people think it's the wrong football outcome. But that's not a good look either, because football should ultimately be decided on the field of play and not via legal paperwork, at least in this kind of context.
Thank you, Ben, for that. I mean, I guess there are 2 things I'd finish off by saying. One, whichever way it goes, the Confederation of African Football, CAF as you call them, will have been damaged, and it looks like they couldn't run an actual CAF the way things are going. And I guess, secondly, that it opens up a whole ball of wax, if that's the correct phrase. Why wouldn't anybody want any game that ends controversially or you don't like the result, find a reason to appeal against it and hope that the lawyers, who after all are there to find loopholes in things, make it stick? I think it's a really sad day for international football. I've got nothing against Morocco if they'd won, because of course if they'd scored their penalty they wouldn't be going on about any of this, but they didn't. And so we go. Thanks to Ben Jacobs, as always, for bringing us the very latest on these stories. We'll follow that, of course, when that goes to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. And next here on Trans Europe Express, we will turn the eye of Sauron onto the Bundesliga.
How do you feel that Jamie's wearing your mask? How do you feel about that?
I can't even see him. I can't see him.
I haven't got the mask on. I haven't got the mask on.
Fully got
I
it
can't
on.
see it.
Just breathing in there the lot.
Do you know what? All I can say is I wish I had the mask on now.
To be fair, you look like Ange.
It's just who we are, mate.
Your team play like
Seriously though, mate. Can we end it now? Mate, you've turned into a meme club, you are.
Can we end this interview now?
No.
Hold on, say that again.
You've turned into a meme football club.
I remember it. I mean, the last week, I don't think I've ever known a week like it, right? So you go back to Wednesday of last week and 74 minutes on the clock, and you think about what's happened. Conceded 5 goals in 30 minutes.
Slap.
Jesus Christ. Listen,
has anyone seen Candy? Dennis Wise?
Right, okay, hold on.
Solar.
Yeah, hold on.
Listen, who's that?
No, leave it, man. Leave it. No, leave it. No, I'm doing something. No.
But did you think you would come from 3-0 down? Did he think he'd come from 3-0 down?
He was confident. It was encouraging signs, he said.
Encouraging signs.
I'm a United fan.
He's a bloody United fan.
Hey!
Don't swear.
Come on, boys. Listen, at the end of the day.
Hold on, who are you playing in the Champions League?
Let me ask you a question. Who's going to play next year? Who's going to play next year?
Champions League. I'm getting sick of United fans.
Our regular listeners will know as we head into, Andy, I think very, very soon is the 10th anniversary of this programme. I was looking on my Twitter feed the other day, and I think sometime in April, in 10 years ago. So we're heading towards the 10th anniversary of this programme. But regular listeners will know it's been deeply influenced by the music of Kraftwerk. Hence the title music and all the rest of it, and the title indeed of the show. So we love any words that begin with K, and the German way of putting K at the start of virtually every word. So I'm delighted to say, as we turn our attention to Germany now, the headline is Kiel and Kvasniok conked, with a K at the start. We'll get on to Messrs. Kiel and Kvasniok in a second. First, though, we should say that Bayern beat Union Berlin by 4-0. Harry Kane scored in his first Bundesliga appearance in a month. The only thing I'd say about that is, having watched Harry Kane play for a decade, he's not one of those players who thrives on being left out either mentally or physically. He needs to play a lot. When he can just come back from injuries, take him a long time to get back up to speed. I just hope that Bayern know what they're doing. And I'm sure, of course, his 32-year-old body is very different from his 22-year-old body. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, in terms of Bayern actually winning stuff, I think they've got it spot on. I mean, really, he came on against Bayer Leverkusen to play in the Bundesliga last weekend for the last half hour. Then he started the game against Atalanta in the week. This is the first Bundesliga game he'd started in nearly a month. He scored and missed 2, by his standards, unmissable chances. So there was a sense of ring rust. But it only really matters if you think, well, he needs to beat the Robert Lewandowski single-season goal-scoring record in the Bundesliga.
No, they're saving him for the Champions League now. Let's be absolutely straight about it.
That doesn't really matter. Or it doesn't matter to Vincent Kompany. And if it matters to Kane, there'll inevitably be a couple of games where he feels good enough to unload on a couple of teams. So it's still on the table, I'd say.
Okay. So if we know that Bayern Munich are going to win the title in Germany, sadly, Andy, I suppose it's sad, but not if you're a fan of Dortmund, we now know who's going to be second, because Dortmund they've got a bigger gap now to third than they have to Bayern Munich.
Yeah, that's right. They're 9 points behind Bayern, and they're 11 points ahead of Stuttgart in third place. So that tells you everything you need to know about how consistent they've been under Niko Kovac. It's felt quite thrill-free a lot of the time. But having said that, it was exciting yesterday in the top spiel last night, where they were 2-0 down at home to Hamburg at half-time and deserved to be. Came back and won 3-2, a really, really good second half from them. But actually, so much about what's going on at Dortmund at the moment, because we know exactly where we're going to finish. They're going to finish in the table, and because they're out of the Champions League and they're not going to actually win anything. Is that what's going to happen next season? And that sort of accelerated today when the sporting director, Sebastian Kehl, it was announced that they will split at the end of the season, that there's a mutual split between club and Kehl. Now, Kehl has been there for 20 years as player and as management. So in one sense, it's a big deal to move on from him, just as they moved on from Hans-Joachim Watzke. On the other hand, there's always been a sense over the last few years that there's too many cooks and there's too many people who want to say inside the tent. And, you know, they've become this sort of mini Bayern where they've got all these people who've got Dortmund DNA floating around the club at a boardroom level. And it's felt like Kehl is there, but what actually is his job? What level of authority does he actually have? And he's discussed a few jobs with other clubs, notably in the past Hamburg, actually, and Cologne, without coming to any sort of conclusion. I guess we'll find out what's next for him in the next month or two. But it's probably not that bad a thing for Dortmund. Now, when we're talking about succession as well, Luca Reggiani has signed a new contract, his first pro contract, the 18-year-old Italian, scored a goal against Augsburg going back last week, which is his first goal for the first team, and he was our star of the week, of course. And so he's committed his future to Dortmund. He celebrated that by having a dreadful first half, making a mistake that led to one of the goals and getting dragged at half-time. But it was interesting because what they've made clear is, because the rest of the season is almost all dead rubbers, that what they're going to do is just play him. So Niklas Süle, who's earning well in excess of 10 million euros a year, is probably not going to play for the club again, and was pictured and filmed looking really grumpy on the bench. And there's even rumours that he might retire at the end of this season.
Oh, I don't know. There seems to be. I suspect there's a couple more good seasons in Niklas Süle yet, but we shall see.
You'd hope.
Meanwhile, in that pack, if that's the right word, behind Dortmund, Leverkusen, and they're finding new ways to allow their Champions League hopes to fade even further, Andy.
Yeah, look, they've got a massive issue at the moment, and I think the problem is that they're now 4 points adrift of the top four, and they've done one of their absolute banker games, because they went to Heidenheim yesterday. They were 2-0 up. Then, having squandered that lead, they went 3-2 up, and they still managed to concede a late equaliser. I mean, Malik Tillman, who scored the opener, said it was absolutely embarrassing afterwards, were his words. And just seeing Kasper Hjulmand trying to find a reason for it. I don't know. It's not even an excuse, but a reason for it. It was painful as well. And now they're facing a situation where they could well miss the top four. And obviously that has financial implications, status implications. And now I think even if they do pull it out of the bag and win it, and considering they've drawn 4 of the last 5, I don't really see that, especially when you look at the quality of the teams above them. I think they will too part from their coach at the end of this season.
Yes, well, Cologne have beaten them to it, because they drew 3-3 with Mönchengladbach in what you informed me was the 100th Rhine derby, which was lovely. And they've got rid of Lukas Kvasniak. But nobody seems to be mourning him, Andy.
Not that much, no. And the fans came out, and the ultras had some banners against him going back into January. He somehow survived that, but really it's the results that have done him in the end, because I think you look at the performance they they gave yesterday, and it was a 3-3 draw. It was a thrilling game. It didn't feel like the players had completely jacked it in or anything like that. But he's had issues with Syed Al-Mala, who is their biggest star for a long time, the teenage winger, and who scored in this game. And, you know, the sporting director, Michael Kessler, just came out and said afterwards, look, I like him as a guy and I rate him, but ultimately we've won 2 games in 5 months. You know, it's just not enough. And as soon as he said not enough, a point is not enough, you thought, right, okay, you know what's going to happen here. It was just not whether he would get sacked, but when he was going to get sacked, really. And they've got themselves in a bit of a hole, even though they're really fighting hard. I think it's interesting that clearly the management team have some level of support in the dressing room. You can see that by the way that the players are doing their best. And henceforth, Rene Wagner, who's the assistant coach, Kwasniok, he's going to take the team until the end of the season. A younger man, a fresher face, a new voice is how it's seen. But they really need something because, you know, they had that old classic sort of cliche of German football before the game. They had one of the leaders of Wilderhorde, one of the ultra groups, come out and sort of shout at the players. And I always look at the players and think they're not listening to this. But I don't think they could really help it because this guy was a really passionate speaker. And they all applauded him at the end. And then they conceded a goal 27 seconds in. So sometimes it's tactics as well as motivation.
Of course, it can't all be just about pluck, can it? Who's your star of the week in Germany, Andy?
My star of the week is, well, no one from Wolfsburg because they shot themselves in the foot again. Is someone who is doing something right in the relegation battle. It's Paul Nabel of Mainz. Scored twice today, including a very, very late winner. 2 lovely finishes against Albert Rio's Eintracht Frankfurt to get them moving up the table.
And my star of the week is one of those people who proves that all fans hate it when the team get 3 up and then start to pony about, bringing on children and passing the ball square. Sometimes it's good to keep going for the goals. So my star of the week is Brian Gruder. He's a Brighton player, but he's on loan to Leipzig. Now, he got 2 goals as Leipzig won 5-0 against Hoffenheim. The point I'm going to make, though, that puts them up to 4th on goal difference. So keeping going when you get 3 up sometimes pays dividends, and that takes Leipzig up to 4th on the table, and Brian Gruder is my star of the week. Next here on Trans Europe Express, Andy will be telling you all about an amazingly tight race for the European spots behind the top 2 in France.
Feel that Arne Slot is getting his excuses in early before they meet PSG?
I just think that ultimately Liverpool have had a great result and well done them. And you know, people suggesting that Arne Slot was under pressure for this game, they've come out and smashed Galatasaray.
Right.
Fantastic. But I don't like managers building in some comfort zone into... There's no need to build up PSG as a boogeyman. There's every suggestion that you shouldn't be sitting there on television like I was advocating for a moment ago saying, we're going to smash PSG, because I know that puts you as a hostage to fortune.
Right.
But there's no need to start building in how good PSG are, what they are and what they're not. Who cares? How good are you and what do you do? And there's no need to build in the fact that you're playing Brighton on Saturday at 12:30, because, by the way, Brighton haven't got the same sort of squad as you got.
All right.
So,
I mean, but surely last night against Galatasaray, it was a near-perfect performance. Is that not what Liverpool fans worldwide have been calling out for? And is it going to go anyway to calming the Slot sceptics, of whom there are many? Ian, big Liverpool fan, you're first up again. What would you like to say? Good morning.
Hi, lads. Okay.
Good, Ian.
I totally agree with Simon. he's getting like a buffer in place there before we play them. He shouldn't be saying things like that. We should just we're playing PSG. They're a good side. They won it last year, but at the end of the day, we're Liverpool Football Club, and what we've got to do is just get at them and the same type of tempo we played last night. That's what we need even more. So I totally agree with Simon. Sometimes in some of his language he says on the interviews, it does sound like he's getting excuses as an early, and it gets on my nerves. He fails to realise he's managing one of the biggest clubs in the world.
The breakfast show, as you heard there, returns tomorrow morning from 6 a.m. with Ali McCoist and Ray Parlour are joined by a host of guests, including the former Arsenal midfielder Emmanuel Petit and celebrity Arsenal fan Piers Morgan, as they look back on Arsenal's League Cup final defeat to Manchester City. That's talkSPORT Breakfast with Ali McCoist and the former Arsenal midfielder Ray Parlour from 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Set your alarms, you won't want to miss it. So let me get this right. Ray Parlour, Piers Morgan and Emmanuel Petit. Do you think that my colleagues at talkSPORT had a particular result in mind, Andy, for the League Cup final? I suspect they did. Which takes us to the results from France over the last 3 days, because on Friday night, Lens, who are still very much snapping at the heels of PSG, won 5-1, and PSG responded by winning 4-0 at bumbling Nice. So those two are still, they're not neck and neck, but there's still a horse race at the top of the French First Division. Behind it, though, Andy, the race for the European places could not be any tighter.
Yeah, and 2 huge games this afternoon, Danny. First, we had Lyon 1, Monaco 2. Monaco have been on an incredible run, a 6th successive win, which takes them right back into the pack chase in the Champions League when they didn't look like they could make the Conference League going back a month. And then we had Marseille 1, Lille 2, straight off the back of that. In both cases, the home side went in front first, and then Monaco and then Lille came back. The winner, headed by Olivier Giroud in the 89th minute as well, a huge contribution from him. And you could kind of see, I suspect we'll talk about Aston Villa and Lille later, and Lille were criticised a lot in the French press for their performance and the way they approached that game against Aston Villa. Well, today made exactly clear what they were doing. They were resting their best players for this, the big one, really. They felt that this was the really doable one. And it made a big difference. Ethan Nwaneri had got the opener after coming on as sub for the injured Mason Greenwood. But Lille got themselves back into it with Thomas Meunier equalising, with then setting up the winner for Giroud. But I tell you who will be looking forward to the international break, and that's Lyon, because they had a couple of their injured players back. Endrick setting up Pavel Schultz to open the scoring. But then in the second half, they were just physically overpowered, really, by Monaco, who not only looked the most informed of all those teams there, but they looked the fittest as well. And I think that makes a massive difference. They won't be welcoming this international break, whereas Lyon, who've got a lot of weary legs, really will. Now, they were very unhappy about Folarin Balogun's penalty winner because Endrick was quite clearly fouled in the build-up to that. They weren't given a free kick, and then 3 seconds later, Monaco were getting a penalty at the other end. But yeah, the attention to detail in the officiating was poor enough that it was missed when Magnus Akliouche, who scored the equaliser, was headbutted in a challenge by Nicolas Tagliafico and quite clearly dazed, and neither the referee or VAR picked it up. And it was interesting, actually, hearing Corentin Tolisso talk about it afterwards, because he said, Francois Letexier, the referee, he said when he talked to him about the foul on Hendrick that wasn't picked up, he said he found his response arrogant. And obviously, a lot of people have quoted Tolisso off for this. And look, I don't want to sit here and criticise referees. I would like to think we defend them a reasonable amount. And I would like to think we have a true appreciation for what a difficult job it is, often made more difficult by VAR in the modern context. But I do think there is a bit of an issue with French officiating, and there's something that Tolisso has touched on there, in the fact that you have a set of officials who talk to the players like they're children and quite often ignore VAR, and that is a bit of an issue. And as I said, both Lyon and Monaco suffered from it in that game. So it's far from ideal, especially in such a big match, because as you said, now it's super tight. So PSG and Lens are well away, but I'm going to do one of my readings of the table now, because
lovely. We almost need to get background music, tension beds for this, don't we?
Yeah, I feel it should be like Mastermind. It's Marseille in third on 49. That's the final automatic Champions League place. Lyon fourth, 47. Lille fifth, 47. Monaco sixth, 46. And you've got Rennes on 44. They didn't beat the bottom team, Metz, today, but they're all still in it.
And Andy, if the last few weeks have seen Lyon, who had that amazing run of victories, fall away, and as you say, they're probably desperate and gasping for the international break to begin, which it now has. Yet off the pitch, things are even worse, because the wretched reign of John Textor keeps on coming back and biting this club harder and harder and harder.
Yeah, I think I described him to you as like the Charlie Cotton of French football, sort of leaving poor old Dot Lyon with all the bills, because it emerged this week that a lender has made a demand to Lyon for tens of millions of euros, about $40 million US, I think it is, for the transfer of Igor Jesus. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, but Igor Jesus never played for Lyon. But there are a number of players who played for Botafogo, who never played for Lyon, who were transferred, in inverted commas, to Lyon. Lyon bought them from Botafogo and never ended up playing for the club. And now the financer who basically Textor borrowed the money on Lyon's behalf and spent it for these players who never came, is trying to recall it from Lyon. So there's a big question over who actually owes the money. We'll see going forward, but having extricated themselves from a lot of financial difficulty last summer, Michel Kang and Michael Gerlinger probably thought they were on the other side, and now they're going to have to do it all again.
Yeah, which always begs the question, I don't expect you to answer, Andrew, you're not a forensic accountant. Where is all this money going? It sloshes around between Brazil, France, the East Midlands of England. Let's not mess about. And, you know, I'm sure it's all perfectly above board and could be explained to me by somebody with a degree in accountancy and international law, living in the Virgin Islands. But to a normal numbskull like myself, it just keeps going, follow the money. Follow the money. What's going on here?
Fortunately, we've always got John Textor to tell us it's perfectly normal.
Yes, and of course he is my guiding light in all this, Andy, as you can imagine. Listen, my star of the week in France, I so love this story. Ciro Immobile, who has been such a wonderful footballer for so long, and has now ended up at Paris FC at 36 years of age. And I thought that's a lovely retirement home, isn't it? You're in one of the most beautiful cities in the world, the best food you could ever eat. What a great place to see out your sunset days. Well, he's making a contribution. They played Le Havre today. They won 3-2. And despite getting a red card in that game as well. And what do you know? Ciro Immobile scored the first. So Ciro, who's been on with us for the whole 10 years of this show so far, like so many footballers, is my star of the week. Who is yours?
I was just wondering, Danny, because of the incredibly close proximity of the two stadiums, when his wife drops him off, He goes, "All right, I'm just going off to play my match for PSG today. I'll see you later, darling." You could do
Why
that.
do you assume his wife doesn't know anything about football? Because you're an unreconstituted caveman. That's why, Andy.
Probably.
Yeah.
Well, it reflects worse on him. It reflects worse on him if I say driver.
Radio announcer accuses the most right-on and beautiful man on the radio of being a caveman. Well done, Danny. Listen, we've got lots to get through the next hour. Oh, no, I haven't had your star of the week yet.
Yeah, we're going to quickly go for Swiss international Brian Ocko, because he scored twice for Auxerre as they beat Brest 3-0. An impressive result at the best of times. But after Manchester City and Lyon spent all week complaining how it's impossible to do games when you're reduced to 10 men, Auxerre, who were really struggling at the bottom, had their goalkeeper, Donovan Leon, sent off after 5 minutes, and they went on to beat a really informed team 3-0. So there you go.
Okay, well, we've got a lot to get through in the second hour, including a review of everything happening in the Champions League, where if you open the window, you can still hear the sound of the English clubs getting their bottom well and truly smacked. Smacking next on Trans-Europe Express.
What does that framework look like? Are we talking about like back end of summer? We could see AJ back in the ring if it all goes well. You know, where is it? And do we still get that Tyson Fury fight possibly at the back end of this year?
I think that him fighting in the summer is hopefully what we're working towards. But it's very different him training as he has been and going back into a proper full-on camp. And I think that's what we have to see over the next few weeks, how he gets back into those full camps, those training sessions. The Fury fight is the one everyone wants. We all want it. We're all fans.
2 years, isn't it? I mean, if you think about it, if AJ fights in the summer, it's 2 years. Put Jake Paul to one side, all respect, but it's 2 years since a competitive fight. So there's going to have to be some finessing and ensuring that he can get to the levels that require him to be able to fight someone like Fury.
I think the problem we've got, obviously, with Anthony Joshua, and a massive hurdle he has to overcome is this psychological damage that he's got going in there, and that's bigger than the physical battle. That's bigger than the warm-up fights, etc., etc. And that's where none of us are going to be able to give those answers until AJ sort of.
Well, I think in part that battle has been embraced by Anthony by saying he wanted to fight. I think most people were expecting him not to. I think people saw him in London post the circumstances in December and felt that there was very little chance that Anthony was psychologically.
Who would have thought a sporting event's halftime show could have a bigger impact than the game itself? Well, the Super Bowl halftime show does exactly that. In 2024, Usher brought in an audience of 180 million worldwide, the biggest ever in the event's history. But how did singing and dancing get to be the centerpiece of America's biggest sporting event? The first edition of the Super Bowl was held in 1967, when the Green Bay Packers beat the Kansas City Chiefs in Los Angeles. Because of the sheer size of the event, organisers wanted to put on entertainment at halftime for the fans in the stadium. It was a display of marching bands, dancers and pure USA patriotism, and that was the theme that followed for years. In the 1980s, the Walt Disney Company got involved and we started seeing some interesting and questionable displays. But we got our first glimpse of halftime shows to come in '93, when none other than Michael Jackson stunned fans with his 15-minute medley of his own smash hits. When he walked out on stage, he had to wait for the crowd's cheers to die down for about 2 minutes before even starting his first song. Diana Ross, Gloria Estefan, Phil Collins all starred in their own shows, as did Aerosmith, who performed alongside NSYNC. Things got a little bit out of hand in 2004 when Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson produced perhaps the most famous or infamous wardrobe malfunction in history. Shows from the likes of Prince, Lady Gaga and Beyonce are considered by critics as the best. To give you an idea of the scale of things, Rihanna's 2023 halftime show included roughly 800 people. These range from backing dancers to stage crew to camera operatives broadcasting to millions around the world. The whole stage for that show was built in roughly 8 minutes and was broken down and cleared away in the same time. The acts perform for free nowadays, even though the experts reckon it costs around $13 million to put on Rihanna's show. Artists know they'll rocket up the charts in the following weeks. Rihanna's average sales improved by 140% in the months following her performance. The Super Bowl halftime show will be a fixture in pop culture for years to come. So the question is, who next?
Yeah, welcome back to Trans-Europe Express. And from half past onwards, we'll do those Champions League games that saw some amazing results, some huge gaps between the teams, and one after another, the great giant Redwoods of the Premier League humbled in 4 of the 6 cases. Before that, we'll be talking about Spain as well. As I say, a former, let me see if you can get it, former West Ham and Oxford United striker has been doing very, very well indeed. We'll also be looking at Italy. All that coming up in the course of the next 60 minutes here on Trans-Europe Express with me, Danny Kelly, him, Andy Brassell, and you, the listening millions. Yes, so Andy, our headline for Italy is Sassuolo bug Juventus. We'll get on to that because there's been a big game tonight at the top of the table because AC, by beating Torino 3-2, had closed the gap to 5 points. Inter then went to Florence to take on Fiorentina this evening.
Yeah, and remember Fiorentina, right in a relegation battle. They need the points very much as well. And it was a good start for Inter. Francesco Pio Esposito scored again in the first 40 seconds, and you're thinking they're set fair from here. But it became like quite an open game, and Fiorentina were really brave. And then they, having won at Cremonese to get themselves out of the relegation zone in the big game last week, they got themselves an equaliser. Sharon Door, following in after a Goodmanson shot was saved, and yeah, great result for them. Not so great for Inter. And bear in mind that Milan had won against Torino 3-2. Torino, who've been in quite good form of late, earlier in the weekend, to close the gap to 5. So that point takes it back to 6. And that's what Alexander Kolarov was saying afterwards. Now, he's the assistant manager, of course, for Manchester City fullback to Christian Kivu. Christian Kivu was sent off last week against Atalanta, so suspended and in the stands at the Artemio Franchi. So not only was Kolarov on the touchline, he was speaking to the media afterwards, and he said, look, can we all just relax a bit? We're still 6 points clear. And that is true, although it did look like they were going to win the league by 15 points about a fortnight ago. So I'm not sure I can quite say the title race is on yet. I mean, no. Correct me if I'm wrong. It just feels as if it's closer than before. So it makes it feel like there might be a race. It doesn't feel like there's a race yet, but it feels like there might be a race.
Mentioned of Piero Esposito, 20 years of age, of course. Italy have got their World Cup playoffs coming up. Depending on how Gattuso decides to go 2-3 at the back, it's pretty likely that he's going to get a game in some of these. And we'll be moving on to those World Cup playoffs in the third hour of Trans-Europe Express tonight, as the European playoffs are happening in the next few days. Huge games all over the continent. And I suspect young Esposito is going to be involved in those. Which then takes us, Andy, to Juventus. and their game against Sassuolo, where they didn't win, thus once again damaging their own chances of Champions League football next season. But not only did they not win, they didn't win at home. They didn't win at home against Sassuolo, and a Sassuolo who were hobbled, shall we say, in a way that I've never heard before, a professional football team.
Yeah, it reminded me of my childhood, actually, because they were decimated by whooping cough, Sassuolo, which is pretty unusual. And this bug meant that not only the players who had it, but the players who showed that they might have symptoms of it were all left back in Emilia-Romagna. So that meant no Matic, that meant no Christian Torsfeld, a host of others. And you thought really that Sassuolo were going there to get hiding when Kenan Yildiz put Juventus in front in the first half. That's what it looked like. But they got an Andrea Pinamonti equaliser, of course, set up by Domenico Berardi, who, of course, is going to do something against Juventus, bearing in mind his historical connection with them. And then it looked right near the end as if it would all be for nothing, as Juventus got a penalty. Locatelli steps up, and Muric, fresh off making a mistake, it seemed, every week in the Premier League for Burnley the season before last, and probably for Ipswich last season as well, saves the penalty with great comfort, and Fabio Grosso's lot get a draw, which is great for them, but not so great for Juventus, who, of course, are still chasing a place in that top four. And in a weekend when Como won handsomely, when Roma won not so handsomely, and Napoli won, and viewers of BBC Scotland might have seen that scratchy win at Cagliari on Friday night with another Scott McTominay goal right at the beginning. Everything kind of went against Juve this weekend.
Mandy, did you get... sorry, I got momentarily distracted there by something I'll tell you about in a second. Did you mention Eric Milik?
No, but I think we should, because funnily enough, even after the penalty miss, he came on and nearly scored a winner. And now you're probably out there thinking, Eric Milik still plays for Juventus. Yes, he does. But he hadn't played for 665 days at club level after injury. So to see him come back, I mean, obviously it would have been a fairy tale, as much as a Juventus winner could be a fairy tale right at the end of this game. But still, it'll be interesting to see what he can contribute. Because, of course, in recent weeks, all the talk has been of Juventus paying him up. He's still got a year on his contract at the end of this season. Looks like Dusan Vlahovic, who also came back as a sub, is going to be going as well at the end of the season. So that's quite a lot of potential wages to be reused elsewhere.
Andy, and you know, despite my own current predicament, I have no formal medical training. This thing with Sassuolo is really serious. Whooping cough, you know, its nickname in the world is the 100-day cough. The traditional medicines applied to it means that you can overcome it in between 4 weeks and 2 months. It's a really serious condition in adults. And if that's taken hold of the club, they're going to be without some of these players. Now, I don't know what kind of advanced medicine that they have access to in professional football clubs. I really don't. But traditionally, people with whooping cough don't just sort of take 2 aspirin and get up and run a marathon, I promise you.
Yeah, it's my earliest memory, actually. But what I do know is that I didn't have access to a cryo chamber in our council flat when I was 5.
Yeah, well, my first disease memory is chicken pox, where one of us got it. And my mum and dad, they had the 4 of us in the space of about 2.5 years. There's a set of twins in there. And I remember we weren't very much allowed in my parents' bedroom most of the time. But I remember we all 4 of us, tiny kids, got thrown into my parents' bedroom and locked in there for a day. Presumably because one of us, well, I do know, I asked my mother, because one of us had chicken pox. So you're all going to get it at the same time so we can deal with it. She was infecting the whole lot of us. I mean, now, in her 90s, I said, do you still think it was a good idea? Being my mum, she goes, it was a great idea, Danny. Okay, so as you say, I want to talk a little bit more about Como, Andy, because every week now, and at the risk of putting the curse of Lyon on them, we come back to Como and say, yep, we expect to slip up one day soon because they're, 11,000-seater stadium, relatively new to this league, all the rest of it. They go from strength to strength to strength.
Yeah, they do. And look, I think what's amazing is thinking about everything that's gone wrong for them this season. So we talked about Alvaro Morata not scoring a Serie A goal. Yeah, and he was meant to be the old head who contributed goals and leadership. And he has contributed leadership, but you can't really have a striker who's not scoring you any Serie A goals, especially one on those sort of wages. And then you've got one of their highfalutin youngsters, and they've bought some really great young players to develop. Alassane Diao, who came across from Betis to much fanfare last season, brilliant player. He only scored his first goal of the season yesterday, and then set one up after that for Anastasios Douvakis for the second one in this 5-0 win over Pisa. So he's sort of a lot bit below what you would expect from him, because he's a rare talent, Diao. And Douvakis is an interesting one because he doesn't really fit into their timeline. Someone who's in his mid-20s, who's a previous Eredivisie top scorer, and players like him and Martin Baturina chipping in goals has made all the difference, and it's a really, really good collective effort. Of course, Nico Paz scored as well.
Of course he did, yeah, of course he did. My star of the week is Mario Hermoso. He's the Roma defender, and he set up the winning goal for Rubino Vaz, and then he did a great clearance off the line to ensure that victory for Roma against Lecce, that put further distance between themselves and Juventus in the race for Champions League places. So that was a great performance by Mario Hermoso. Now, Andy, of course, is the multilinguist among me and him, certainly. Wait till Hatchard gets here with his fluent German. He'll show Andy a thing or two. But Andy told me that Hermoso, Mario's surname, is the Spanish for handsome. So not only did he play well, he's also handsome. I love that. Who's your
He
star?
does exactly what it says on the tin, Danny. Really?
Yeah. Oh, okay. He's Gazaniga rather than insert own less facially gifted player here. I nearly said Ian Dowie, but who even remembers poor old Ian? And also, it's not fair for people to throw stones in greenhouses, is it? Who's your star of the week, Andy?
I've gone for one on behalf of our good friend Alex. He's a big fan of Kenneth Taylor. He was all the time he was at Ajax. He warned that Lazio have got themselves a bargain. Well, they haven't got an option for anything else but a bargain at the moment because they've got no money. Of course, there've been a lot of fan protests recently, but they took advantage of Bologna's tiredness from their Europa League exploits in the week by going there, winning 2-0. Both of them scored by Kenneth Taylor, who's starting to look the part in Serie A. That one's for you, Alex.
Yeah, what would an Ajax give to have players of Kenneth Taylor's standard in and around their funny-looking squad these days? Thank you very much for all of that, Andy. Coming up next, we'll be looking to what's been going on in Spain, including, as I say, and you'll be getting out your little computer programs now. We'll be talking about a player who's done well this week in Spain, having previously played for West Ham and Oxford. That's coming up next here on Trans Europe Express.
You know he's Brazil's all-time goal scorer?
I don't care. He's got
more goals than Pele.
Was Pele all that? Was he all that, Pele? Would Pele get in to Arsenal's team now?
Hold on. What do you mean?
Would Pele get in Arsenal's team now? Would he get ahead of Martinelli?
You don't think Pele's any good?
I never saw it. I mean, all I've seen is...
You're not having him better. You don't think he's better than Gyökeres?
I don't know whether Pele was as good as everyone said.
He won 3 World Cups!
I know, but that was back then, wasn't it?
What do you mean?
I know.
You're not having Pele?
No, it's a little bit like someone winning, let's say back in Like
the hat-trick in a World Cup final.
Let's say, like in the early 1800s, early 1900s, someone won Wimbledon 25 times. They're not going to be better than Federer or Djokovic.
Right, but Pele can't help the fact that he was born in whenever he was born in the 60s.
At that time, Pele was obviously very good.
Right.
But don't tell me Pele gets an Arsenal's team now.
What do you mean?
The best side in the country. Who's he getting?
He's not getting in front of Gyökeres.
He ain't getting ahead of Saka.
Are you having a laugh?
No, I'm not.
What?
No.
I can't believe you said that.
I've never
heard you come. I've never heard you come out with so much guff.
No, but we don't.
Pele.
But we don't know how good Pele was.
What do you mean?
We are told.
What do you mean?
No, at the time,
he won 3 World Cups.
No, I know he did, and I'm not taking that. Of course, I'm not.
It's not like he played in the 1600s.
No, I know, but
we saw footage.
Yeah, we did see footage. But what I'm saying is, back then, football.
So that was good, everybody. For some of you, a handful of you are watching us on YouTube and other visual platforms, Andy. And the divine Mrs. Kelly has just come in and brought me a cup of hot tea. Okay, there it is in my clockwork orange mug, because everything in my house, you know, has significance. And I went to say to her, because she brought me a lovely cup of tea, thank you, darling, I love you. But I did it with my hand over my mouth in the style of footballers now to make her laugh. It worked out very, very well indeed. Yeah, thank you for the cup of tea, Alex. I hope it helps the next little bit of broadcasting. Where we're talking about Spain next, Andy, with our headline, Sevilla not safe. We'll get on to the relegation battle, which is juicy, really delicious in Spain, as it is in England, I understand. But first of all, we should say that at the top of the table, Barcelona beat Rayo Vallecano by 1-0. They weren't comfortable. And there were some interesting side issues here, including involving the goalkeeper, Juan Garcia, which you'll tell us about. And the news that Hansi Flick has committed himself to the club, or is going to commit himself to the club going forward, but says that, you know, the great coach Hansi Flick, this will be his last gig.
Yeah, that's right. And I guess we should start with today, because to put some perspective on what we started the show with, and that brilliant win for Real Madrid in the Madrid derby, they really needed that to keep some sort of pace with Barcelona, only 4 points bit behind, because Barcelona had won earlier in the day against Rayo Vallecano, only just. And if you were ready to say that the only reason they won 7-2 in the week is because Newcastle were really terrible at the back, well, you might have part of a point. But on the other hand, they clearly put a lot of effort in, because they didn't quite look at it today. They looked a little bit jaded. It took a first half goal from Ronald Araujo to win them the game, or to put them in front in the game. What won them the game really was Juan Garcia. And it was really funny that Juan Garcia did win them the game, not because he's not a brilliant goalkeeper, because of course he is. We're well aware of that from what he did with Espanyol last season and what he's gone on to do with Barcelona this. But the fact that it was, of course, he went off in the game against Newcastle in the week. And there was a very, very amusing social media post from Wojciech Szczesny. I mean, is there any other type of social media post from Szczesny? And he said, great to make it on. Can't wait for Juan Garcia to be back soon. Get well soon. And it was very much in the sense of, look, I've got a lovely seat here on the bench watching, if not the best team in the world, you know, not far off, one of the top 3 or 4. And I'd really rather go back to that. So you're kind of messing with my chill. Please don't do that. And Garcia took it at his word, came back and made a couple of really, really good saves in the second half to keep Rayo at arm's length. Now, bear in mind that we said a couple of weeks ago that Rayo were deep in relegation shtuck, and having played some really difficult games, they've they've got themselves at least some of the way out of it, and they were unlucky not to take a point today, actually.
Andy, I the reason why you earn the huge bucks you do on this show is because I put a lot of pressure on you for answers. Garcia, to my untrained eye, looks like a brilliant goalkeeper, yet he has only played international level so far for Catalonia. Could he be in the Spanish World Cup squad? Simon is kind of established, but he looks like a brilliant goalkeeper.
Yeah, and he's quite a long way to proving he's a better goalkeeper than Unai Simon now.
Which is why I'm asking you the question.
I know that Simon is a player who has been through a lot for Spain. He's been through a lot of success with Spain now. I do feel he's always got a major mistake in him, which I don't really feel so much with Joan Garcia. I think, like, long term, there's no question.
Yeah, it's just a question of it's very late for him now as a 20-year-old to get into the World Cup squad, particularly in that particular position.
Well, I think it's all about balance as well. You don't really want someone hanging around who, like, there's a massive public clamour to put in, do you? That's the thing. Of course, I wanted to pick up on Hansi Flick as well, Danny. He said before the Champions League game in the week that this is going to be his last gig. Of course, he was asked because Joan Laporta, having been re-elected as Barcelona president, said that the first thing he was doing was extending the contract of Hansi Flick, which is absolutely the right thing to do. You know, brilliant manager who, with his extraordinary, unique coaching ability, gets the most out of players and really gets the most out of a limited squad. And that's not going to change in the near future. They're not going to suddenly come into a ton of money this summer. So he's really important for them going forward, as well as the stuff he's won. It's about his development of players, really. But it's interesting to see someone who, as you were saying earlier, Danny, looks quite fresh-faced for 61.
Yeah,
like calling it a day, especially as, like, most people or most head coaches seem to find it an addiction. Well, he's someone who I think probably does look fresh-faced because he's not done that much club football. You know, he's done.
As I said to you, he's avoided being in the Premier League for a start, which ages managers overnight, doesn't it?
Yeah, that too.
Okay, then meanwhile, at the other end of the table, the relegation battle with the results this weekend is so much back on.
Yeah, it really is. And some really eye-catching results, notably Valencia winning at Sevilla, who were pretty rotten, I thought. And then Elche, who hadn't won for months, beating Mallorca. And they almost didn't get it over the line. They came from a goal down to lead, gave away a penalty in the final minute. And then one of the most reliable strikers in La Liga, and of course a bona fide Trans-Europe Express favourite, Vedat Muriqi, steps up and smashes it a mile over the bar. And so Elche get their win. That leaves Mallorca back in the bottom three. Martin Demichelis, who recently became coach of Mallorca, really lost his rag with a journalist at the end, which shows you exactly how tense it is. And I think, Danny, for the first time this season, I'm going to have to read you through the bottom of the table in La Liga. I think that's where we're at the moment, really.
It's received the Andy Tightness seal of approval, so he has to read it out. Yeah,
exactly. So Oviedo are looking slightly marooned on 21 points at the bottom. Levante second bottom 26. Then we've got Mallorca 28, Elche 29. Alaves 31, Sevilla 31. So Sevilla only 3 points above the trapdoor. Just above them, Rayo Vallecano 34, 32, Girona 34, Valencia 35.
Wow. Now, we've already talked about some big names moving on. We started the show with Sebastian Kehl, for instance, and we talked about others. A really good manager is going to come on the market in the summer, because we now know that Athletic Bilbao's Ernesto Valverde, who, despite having a difficult season with an injury-struck Bilbao this term, is leaving at the end, when his contract comes up at the end of June.
Yeah, he is. Sorry. He is, and I guess it sort of felt like it might be happening for a while, because it's just been a really wearying season. They've had injuries and been playing catch up from the very beginning of the season. They were really stretching defence, particularly at the start of the campaign. And then they had the Champions League campaign that they couldn't really give a proper go because they had so much bad health in the squad. That's really held them back in La Liga as well. So it's been a frustrating season on so many levels. And then they went out to their regional rivals, Real Sociedad, in the semi-final of the Copa del Rey, a competition that they've had a lot of success in over the last couple of years. All I will say, Danny, is, as you mentioned there is a great coach on the market there for someone. I think Valverde, once he's taken a deep breath,
just give us a chunk of his CV, Andy. It speaks for itself.
All right, so through Athletic twice, Barcelona, Olympiacos, you're looking at 2 La Ligas, 2 Copa del Reys, 2 Super Cups, 3 Greek Super Leagues. And, you get in someone who makes a team play with personality as well. So, look, I think he's an absolutely fantastic coach. And I do wonder whether the Sevilla job's going to come up a little bit too soon for him. I mean, why would he want to go there anyway? Presumably, he'd want to go somewhere a bit better. But yeah, it looks like Matías Almeida could be the next to vacate his post. This is the headline in tomorrow's Estadio Deportivo, which is the Seville sports paper. It says, Almeida survives Sunday, although the bets are that he won't last Monday.
Okay, listen, thank you very much indeed for that. My star of the week in Spain is Tony Martinez, who does, of course, sound like a lounge singer who had 2 minor hits in 1972, but he actually plays for Alaves, who were 3-0 down at Celta. But they won the game by 4-3, and Tony scored twice and made 1. Now, this is a man whose CV includes Porto. It's okay. So Porto and Alaves, that's not that strange. But he's also had spells, though I don't remember them, at West Ham and Oxford. Of course, West Ham have a habit of not making the best of target men. But Oxford, surely he could have done well there. Tony Martinez, ladies and gentlemen. Look, if we had more time in the show, I'd do a call-in. Do you remember Tony Martinez playing for Oxford? Who's your star of the week, Andy?
I wonder if he does remember playing for West Ham, actually. But anyway, I've gone for Carlos Espí, who I think has won it relatively recently, but he's having an absolute goal glut at the moment for struggling Levante, is Espí. Got the first 2 in the game against Real Oviedo this weekend. Of course, Levante being Levante, they chucked it away, but they did come back and win 4-2. So they're back in the mix of the table as described.
Okay, the midweek Champions League games, which you heard many of here on talkSPORT, were remarkable in a number of ways. First, there were 6 English teams in them. Secondly, it was a record-breaking amount of goals scored, many of them against those 6 English teams. Over the next 25 minutes, Andy and I will try and go through all of those games to see where we are with the Champions League. It was an incredible crop of matches and ties in particular, and we'll poke them all now with a pointed stick and look at them through a Sherlock Holmes style magnifying glass. That's coming up next.
After 2 decent results in a row, has Igor Tudor earned his stay of execution at Tottenham until the end of the season? Well, Drive presenter and ex-Spurs striker Darren Bent certainly thinks so.
The performances before that, I mean, the 6 before that, oh my God, 6 straight losses in a row. I thought
what's going to happen here? Like, where's it going to end? And they put in a decent performance against Liverpool. And as you said, they beat Atletico in the second leg. And they have got confidence now because that's 2 unbeaten now in all competitions, 2 unbeaten. The game on Sunday's the one. It's so big. But clearly now that Igor Tudor's going to be here for the foreseeable now. He's here to the end of the season.
Yeah.
I can't see them making a change now this season because you've seen...
If they were to lose Forest, lose away at Sunderland, he'd still be there.
Potentially, yeah. I think so.
Very interesting. Spurs Nottingham Forest on Sunday is absolutely gigantic. So would you agree with Darren Bent there? Have we seen enough that's been good from Igor Tudor?
That was a brilliant point away at Liverpool. And the game in midweek, which I watched, I thought there was a lot more spirit, a lot more, really wanting it more for if you're a Tottenham player. So they've got to take that now into this game on Sunday against Forest. Look, Forest will know they're coming off that win as well. They'll be really happy with how they got the result away from home. They'll probably sit back Forest and try and hit them on the break, but they've got good players as well. Gibbs White, Adore, Jesus up front, Anderson in midfield. So they've got a decent squad of players itself. So it's going to be an interesting game. But I think the first goal is, I know it's an old cliche. First goal is going to be really important in that game. If Forest can somehow nick it, then you can see the fans really getting a little bit frustrated. But one thing about the fans the other night, they really, really got behind the team.
Yeah, I don't know when the show got transmogrified by the company talkSPORT from Trans-Europe Express to Trans-Euro Express. It'll probably go back to Trans-Europe Express next year, Andy. But Mark Cloak, who's a regular correspondent to me on social media, has reminded me that this 10-year anniversary I'm talking about for Trans-Europe Express forgets about, a bit like people forgetting about the old Division 1 before the Premier League started, that this show was in full swing before that when it was called Danny Kelly's Eurovision. Now, I've forgotten about this, and of course, the reason it had to change its name is because we got an actual letter from a legal firm from Eurovision, the people who put on the Eurovision Song Contest, saying that people would be confused by us calling it Danny Kelly's Eurovision. And I would have paid good money to be at the meeting where they said, seriously, people will not understand the difference between some geezers talking about Lokomotiv Zivzniak for half an hour at a time and the globe-rogering spectacular panjandarum that is the Eurovision Song Contest.
Yeah, I mean, Danny, it's very much like the easy life, hard life debate, isn't it? But all I will say is those 2 weeks working on Danny Kelly's Eurovision were the 2 best weeks of my life.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Steve, for that. But we took a chance when they said, what are we going to do about this, Danny? And I said, all right, we're going to call it Trans-Europe Express. Now, most people at talkSPORT said, okay, that's a nice title. I, of course, knew the background to it and had to take a chance that German pop superstars' Kraftwerk would not be quite as well acquainted with my learned friends as the people at Eurovision. And to be fair, they've been as good as their word. And there's been nor Florian, nor Rolf, nor any of them who are still alive have bothered to sue Trans-Europe Express. Andy, the Champions League over the past 8-9 days has been extraordinary. The walloping some of these teams got, particularly teams from the Premier League. Let's go through Tuesday's games. I want to start with Chelsea against Paris Saint-Germain. Now, for the first hour of this tie, over there in the French capital, you could say there was nothing between Chelsea and their opponents.
You could.
For the latter match and 30 minutes, so 2 hours in total, you could say Chelsea themselves were nothing, because Paris Saint-Germain pulled up their pantalon and showed us the team that they were last season. And Chelsea had no answer to it.
No, they didn't. And they were just so frighteningly efficient, I guess, especially in the back end of that first leg, that I feel that kind of got into Chelsea's heads. And then you look at the 2 early goals, or early-ish goals, for Kvaratskhelia and Barcola, and that just sort of underlined really how good they can be at their best. But, you know, we've said this for a while, and Lee Davey, who more than knows his PSG, he's very much part of the team here. I know he sees a lot of PSG at first hand, and he's not super confident that they'll go on and win this. I think if you looked at this tie in isolation, you'd think, okay, they're the favourites all over again. But the question is, how long can they keep it up? I think that's where Lee and a lot of other people who know PSG very well are coming from, because the issue is, I mean, you look at Barcola scoring that brilliant goal, and all of a sudden he does his ankle and he's out for 4 weeks, which I think, you know, that could happen to anyone, but it's also at least partly a reflection of the fact that they played an insane amount of football, and Barcola is really amongst the front line of those, because we
far too young to be playing 65 games in a year. Far too young.
Totally, Danny. Well, I think like in the last calendar year, it was nearer 80. It was extraordinary in terms of number. And bear in mind that he's still learning the game. And then people turn around and go, "Why aren't you more consistent?" It's just ridiculous, really, isn't it? You couldn't make it up. But I think that is the thing. When you look at them going into this into this next round, they're the favourites if they're playing like they played in that second leg against Chelsea, and like they played in the last 25 minutes against Chelsea at the Bridge, but you know, at the Parc des Princes. But we don't know if we're going to get that or not. That's the issue, isn't it?
Andy, let me ask you a question that, you know, perhaps is for another day, and certainly our producer won't like us asking this question. But what does this thrashing, there's no other word for it, and the manner of it, what does it do to the Chelsea project? Because we're still waiting to see, after nearly 3.5 years now, the huge amount of outlay and the length of the contracts and the kind of players they've brought in come to fruition, certainly in the Premier League and in Europe.
I don't know, Danny.
You're afraid that Jack's going to sack you if you answer this question negatively, aren't you?
Yeah, I am, yeah. I think it's not that they don't want to win. It doesn't feel like winning is the most important thing to this project. And if it was, they would have bought a few experienced players that would have made a massive difference on the way. Now, I'm not saying that this one signing would have turned the tie, but if you can imagine the season as a whole, when they had that window to sign Mike Maignan in the summer, why not do it?
Yeah.
And you know, you can't turn around and go, oh, well, it's because he doesn't fit. Why? Because he's not 23 or he's not 22. I mean, he's a leader. He's far better than any of the myriad goalkeepers that they've got. They have got no one amongst all those goalkeepers who is going to solve their problem in that position. And until you do something about issues like that and about the centre forward, because really João Pedro who's a brilliant player, having to bear all the load is ridiculous. For Liam Delap at this stage in his career to be expected to provide the answers is ridiculous. And really, if you don't have the answers to that, well, you know, you're not all in on winning, are you? It's that simple.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah. Meanwhile, I haven't listened back to last week's show. Did you tell me that Boda were going through really well and that Sporting Lisbon had no chance whatsoever? Sporting 5, Boda 0. Oh no, that was Lars Siversen.
Well, I think it's interesting because a lot of Sporting's response and the way they played, and they played, well, furiously is the only way to describe it, really.
To be fair, you warned us that this tie wasn't over.
Yeah, I mean, I still thought that Bodo would see it out, but I don't think I or anyone else was prepared for. I thought Sporting were good enough to turn it round, but I wasn't prepared for the sheer fury of the way they went after them. And I felt that a lot of that was due to the fact that they felt underestimated because, of course, you look at Bodo's recent wins before that, and it's, well, if you beat Manchester City and Atletico and Inter twice, of course you're going to beat Sporting. But realistically, this is maybe like, if not the best team in Sporting's history, pretty close. Have been really, really well marshalled in the last couple of years, who since Amorim's gone and it didn't work out with his immediate successor, João Pereira, Rui Borges has done a really brilliant job, but has not really been acknowledged for it. And this really was the first time he came out and said something about it. He said after the game, well, it's amazing that we managed to turn it around, especially having someone like me as coach. You're like, well, right, okay then. Just tell us how you really feel. And I think you look at this game and the fact that he said, on the other hand, before the game, he said, if any team can turn this round, it's us. Give us respect. And they went out there and they had 38 shots. 38 shots. It was an absolute blizzard of a response. And they played brilliantly and they really deserved it. And it is, of course, they're second favourites against Arsenal, but it's not an easy tie for Arsenal at all.
Yeah, well, Arsenal, credit to them on a difficult day for them, but credit to them in the Champions League. They continue to have won every game in the Champions League they played this season with a really routine 2-0 win over Leverkusen.
Yeah, or every game at home anyway. And
sorry, at home.
Yeah, they were really, really superior, and it felt like really before the draw as if this was Leverkusen's limit. Of course, they're trying really hard to get into the next round. They didn't manage to close out the first leg, and that was a bit unfortunate. I thought they were really unlucky on the penalty, but look, Arsenal came back strongly as we knew they would. But I think it was really a testament to how well and how diligently they defended that it took a goal like Eberechi Eze's to open it up, because Yanis Blasvic was brilliant in goal up until that point. He had no chance with that Eze goal.
Yeah, banger. And we've already talked a little bit about Manchester City against Real Madrid when we did Mbappe Watch, but for Real Madrid to win home and away, you would normally say that is a tremendous marker against a team of the pedigree of Manchester City, albeit a team that I still think, despite today's victory in the League Cup, is still a little bit in transition. Look, maybe I'm not buying into the fairy tale. I just can't see this Real Madrid team winning the Champions League. But they're proving me a mug.
Well, I was on board with you totally, but I guess they reminded us that they have something in them of previous Real Madrids, because I think the biggest compliment you can pay Real Madrid over these two legs is those were two performances that could have been given by Zidane Real Madrid. No one's had any doubt over the talent, but they haven't looked together. And you spoke about it earlier, how everyone's started saying, oh, Arbeloa has changed so much. He's been brilliant. He's just night and day with Xabi Alonso, and how like the Madrid papers have been really going to town on that. And it's like, come on, be honest. There've been loads of really bad bits as well. They're really in transition for this game that I think like pricked their pride a little bit as well. They gave a really old school Real Madrid in the Champions League, really efficient, smart, streetwise, roll with the punches kind of performance. Not perfect. And I think it's worth underlining that even against 10 men in the second leg, they needed not one of their goalkeepers, but two of their goalkeepers to have a good game, to keep them with a nice lead in that game. So that's something to bear in mind too, because I, like you, feel that Manchester City were never really a contender for this, and they're far from the finished article. But I think, especially without Mbappe, for them to lay down a marker of, we can step up to these big games and we can take our chances, that feels like progress to me.
Okay, listen, we'll come back in a few seconds' time. We'll talk about the other games, in most of which the ties ended up with enormous gaps between one side and another. And thank God for Atalanta, who made the English side seem almost efficient.
kids, for them last night, horror show. The Wi-Fi didn't work.
Oh my goodness!
I got in.
Panic stations.
As I walked through the door, my eldest, not hello, daddy, my eldest, Wi-Fi's down, and I went, "Can I get through the door first?" Okay, yeah. Little one comes down. Not little anymore, but come on, no Wi-Fi. And I went, "Can I walk in?" Right. Let's get in. I have to eat. If you fix the Wi-Fi, I get a text.
Yeah.
A text from my 14-year-old who's upstairs, can't bother to come down. A text, come downstairs. Is the Wi-Fi working? So I text back, "Can you come down if you want to talk to me?"
Yeah.
Comes down. Oh, is it? Because I can't get... No, it's not. It's not us. It's Virgin. It will be fixed. Just wait.
Yeah.
This morning, first thing, no Wi-Fi, still not ready.
So what did you watch last night on TV?
That's a very good question. We had stuff on the planner already saved.
Yeah.
You've got Sky Glass, right?
So if Wi-Fi goes down...
You're in a world of trouble. I've got stuff saved on my planner. I tell you what, I was watching the football, but Mrs. G was watching the end of... I gave up on that. What's that programme called with the woman from Yellowstone?
Oh, the Saltmarsh.
Yeah, I gave up. Episode 3, nothing was happening slowly. I thought, no, not for me.
It's slow, man.
Yeah.
And even I watched all the episodes, and even at the end, I'm a bit like, what have I just watched?
Yeah, I gave up. She was watching that.
Football was good, though. But no, do you know what? I bet that was quite nice, though. No Wi-Fi.
Well, it was, up until every 4 minutes, I'd like, still not working.
Just relax. Listen, you should have hit him with the... You know you should have hit him with the... When we was younger, there's no such thing as Wi-Fi.
I know. I'm going to have to use my data up. Oh, my God.
Yes, still 3 more English teams to discuss in our review of the Champions League. These are the games that happened on Wednesday. And I guess the most bruised and damaged of the English teams, Andy, and I think you were probably at the first leg, was Newcastle, because whatever else I might have predicted about the tie or about the game in the Nou Camp, I did not see Barcelona scoring 7 times.
No, me neither. And yeah, it was pretty chastening experience for Newcastle. And I guess the thing is, we sort of touched on it earlier. Everything that they did so well in the first leg, they weren't able to do in the second half in particular. I thought rather than... They put themselves in a good position in the first half, or most of the first half, until they gave up that third goal. But having said that, I think it would have been reasonable to come out of that and say, right, they're a bit fortunate, because there are a couple of really great chances that they missed, some good saves that Aaron Ramsdale made. You had Lamine Yamal missing an open goal just before Trippier gave away that penalty, for goodness sakes. So it's not as if it was chanceless. They managed to stay in it, which was remarkable, because, you know, going toe-to-toe with Barcelona at Camp Nou normally doesn't work. So I think that was a nod to their quality, but it was a bad performance second half. They defended really poorly, and it was a shame to see Newcastle's European campaign finish like this, because I thought they gave a really good account of themselves in the first leg for large parts of the second leg's first half, and through the competition in general as well. When you looked at the ties came out, that they had quite a lot of difficult ties and managed to make light of that. So yeah, for it to finish like this was a bit of a shame, especially when you look at today's result, and they probably won't be back for a bit, as already seemed likely.
Yeah, I mean, nor will Spurs, of course.
No.
I mean, a mad tie, a totally mad tie, because after 20 minutes, Spurs were 4 down. In the remaining 160 minutes, they won 5-3. But if the first game in Madrid was insane, the second game in North London was actually a really good game of football, albeit, you know, Atletico did not have to try very... They just need to keep Spurs at arm's length, didn't they?
Yeah, but I did say to you last week that this tie wasn't completely dead, because Atletico going to Atletico on the road. And So it proved, really, because they had their little moments of panic. I think when you look at when they were 1-0 down in the first half, and Matthias Tell was having a great time on both flanks. And then you look at that little mini flurry at the end when, if Kolo Muani had managed to take that chance after Xavi Simons had put them back in front at 3-2, then it could have been pretty interesting as well. I mean, look, it's tempting, I think, to think that this is not an outstanding Atletico side, and to think that if it hadn't been for the first 15 minutes in Madrid, then we would have had ourselves a real tie. But I tend to think, I tend to align myself more with where you're coming from. I thought that Atletico were about as good as they needed to be, and little more over these two ties, even though they had some exceptional performers at various moments. And you talked about Griezmann earlier. I thought this was a really good game by Julian Alvarez as well.
Llorente played well.
Leg.
Yeah,
it was quite a careless performance. And I look at them and I really struggle to see them beating Barcelona again over two legs, to be honest, having done it in the Copa del Rey semi-final, of course.
Okay, let's very quickly then do Liverpool. Well done to Liverpool, actually. A very odd game, though, against Galatasaray. Gala, instead of going to their strengths up front, decided they were going to try and see out the 1-0. Liverpool gobbled that up. But there was also, I mean, I know that Okan Buruk apologised afterwards for the 4-0 defeat. But just odd things like leaving Victor Osimhen on with what was clearly a very serious injury, but I don't know, it was a broken arm.
Yeah,
very odd performance by Gala.
I can't understand that at all. I mean, in a way, of course, it's a reflection of how Osimhen sets the tone, how vital he is in so many ways. But he was completely uncomfortable. They needed to take him off, and they needed really to get Icardi on, but that didn't happen until much later. At the point where Icardi came on, he could make no difference to the result. You know, they're completely adrift already, and it was a perplexing performance, really. Obviously, best wishes to both Osimhen and Noah Lang, who suffered really quite horrible injuries, but yeah. Very well deserved by Liverpool. Yeah. And you know what? Going back to earlier, the unpredictability of this season's PSG and the big difference between their best and their worst, I think Liverpool have got a chance in this, and a decent chance.
Yeah, but they'll be up against teams like Bayern Munich, and I'm just going to read out the score across two legs. Bayern Munich 10. Atalanta 2. Now, if there was ever an argument against the extension of the Champions League to include teams who are from lower leagues, perhaps, and also teams who are finishing fourth in the domestic league, 10-2 in a round of 16, it's almost unthinkable. But Bayern are capable of doing that, and I think, along with Arsenal, unless their form suffers, and you know the tension of trying to get across the line in several tournaments. I think Bayern, I'd be amazed if they weren't, you know, deep into the tournament, and even potential winners, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're heavy favourites against Real Madrid. There's no doubt about that. And, you know, they've got so many different ways of getting you. You know, I think most people, if you ask 10 people in the street who's their best player, I think 9 of them would say Harry Kane. He's had an amazing season. That is not my view, as you know. I think
here comes Michael Olise, everybody.
Yeah, I think Olise is the standout, and you know, he had another brilliant game yesterday against Union Berlin, and just every single game he shows how good he is. He's made up for the fact there's no Musiala at the moment as well. He's had to really fight to come back from his injury, and bear in mind as they're deeper in the competition, then maybe we get a Musiala tuning up for the World Cup. Like, bearing in mind that they have got what Harry Kane said to us earlier this season is the smallest squad that he's ever played in at senior level. I didn't obviously want to draw him on Orient and Millwall and Norwich
and Millwall, yeah.
But yeah, I think what really that is a reflection of is A, what a tight ship Vincent Kompany runs, and B, like how many good young players they've got, bear in mind that 6 teenagers have made a debut for Bayern this season. And of course, this is the week in which Leonard Carl got called up to the Germany national team, full national team for the first time at 18 years of age. And normally that would be news. I kind of almost feel that that's not news, really, isn't it? Because
it's just so obvious that he would have to be in the squad, yeah.
Exactly. And of course, we've heard earlier, we were talking earlier about how Pavlovic and Goretzka. Goretzka is really back to a good level as well. Might be starters for Germany in this World Cup.
Yeah. 10 goals in 2 legs of a round of 16. Well, fantastic. In the last hour, we'll be talking to Tim Vickery, doing our World Cup focus as the European playoffs get into full swing next week. We'll then look at the Europa League and the Conference. Then Andy will take you through the other leagues, including some pretty fantastic goings-on in the Netherlands. That's all coming up in the third and final hour of tonight's edition of Trans Europe Express.
And 35 players have been named. Jason Steele has got his first call-up as part of a 5 goalkeeping battalion that also includes James Trafford, Aaron Ramsdale, Jordan Pickford and Dean Henderson. The defenders that have been included, with a bit of surprise maybe for Kayo Tomori. John Stones has been included. Jarrell Quansah is back in the squad. Harry Maguire has got a recall as well. The other